Hey, beautiful souls and creative minds. Welcome to the Artist Stoop, the podcast where we turn the art world into your personal playground. I'm Jillian Zapata, your host, and I can't wait to dive into the art world with you. Each episode will be kicking it with an incredible artist, unraveling their stories and turning the spotlight on the magic that happens beyond the brush. Get ready to discover new perspectives, forge connections, and immerse yourself one captivating conversation at a time. So grab your favorite beverage, maybe a sketchbook, and let's jump into the kaleidoscope of creativity together. This is the Artist Stoop, where art isn't just a thing you see, it's an experience you feel. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Artist Stoop. Today, our guest artist is Shannon Soldner. Shannon is an oil painter whose work primarily revolves around figurative art. Her artistic exploration delves deep into the narratives we construct for ourselves, often portraying the intriguing concept of individuals acting as unreliable narrators in their own lives. Shannon invites viewers to contemplate the intricate interplay between truth and fiction, reality and perception. Her dedication to her craft is reflected in her evocative artworks, which have garnered recognition for their compelling storytelling and emotional depth. Her unique perspective challenges conventional narratives, offering viewers a fresh lens through which to explore the multifaceted nature of human existence. So welcome to the podcast today, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am super excited to talk to you because your work really captured my attention when just this, I guess it's been a month now, a couple weeks ago at the other art fair here in Dallas. I went on a hunt to, look for artists, and I'm always trying to see what everyone else is doing. And I came across your booth, and I was really transfixed by your work. And then when I asked you about it and you told me, I got goosebumps. What? So it's just I was really, really excited to talk to you about what your work is about. And, because I just find it so interesting, human nature, the stories we do tell each other, and how you portray that on canvas is really interesting to me. But I do want to ask you, was that your first time doing the other art fair?
Yeah, that's my first fair of anywhere. So yeah, that was definitely a different experience.
How tell us, I want to hear about your experience. How was it for you?
Oh my gosh.
Pros, cons, good, bad, ugly, awkward. It was good. All of it.
Since it's my first fair, and I've never done any sort of art fairs at all ever, so I kind of went in I'm going to pack up some paintings and go down to Dallas and see what happens. So, a 10-hour drive, and everything went pretty smoothly, got everything up, and then just kind of sat back and waited. And it was really fun to get the perspective of a whole new audience of people in front of my work and see the reactions to what I'm putting and what I'm making. So that was my biggest, the work is doing what I want it to do. And, kind of just seeing how it goes, how the audience is receiving it.
And how did the audience receive it?
Very well, actually. I was tickled. To get a lot of people, especially with the one painting, Metamorphosis, that the other art fair used in their promo and stuff like that. I had that up where it's a figure, tucked in, and person after person after person walks up and just sees it and then makes that motion. They're mimicking what they're seeing. And I love that.
Was that the one where the person was tucked under the covers?
Yeah.
That was the one that caught my attention above everyone else. So I didn't know that was the title of it.
But yeah, that title of that piece is Metamorphosis, and that one really resonated with just across the board with everybody who saw it, which was really fun. It's fun to see, your work. You send out your work and you don't know who's really looking at it and how,
Mm-hmm.
so it gave me the chance to be kind of a fly on the wall where, I could just
Mm-hmm.
see people react and, um, just how people resonate with the emotive qualities of what I'm trying to do, the stories that I'm trying to tell, and how that connects with, the viewer. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was just fun. It was great. I loved it. Oh, I loved it so much. But yeah.
Yeah, that what you had a friend helping you in your booth, and I remember like
Mhm.
I met her twice on my go around because I went Friday night and then I came back on Sunday because I had
Mhm.
missed like a whole row. And I made sure to stop by your booth again because the first time I missed you, and then I made sure I was like I have to go talk to her.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm really glad that I did. So let's okay. Okay, let's do this. So let's really, I want to understand your work a little bit more. So you paint what you say the imagined stories we tell ourselves as
Mhm.
humans. So how did you come up with this concept to paint these narratives, these false fictions or realities that we tell ourselves as humans?
Um, my work has come, you start one place and you get an idea and it moves on to these other places.
Yeah.
And so originally I was working with archetypes and mythology, a lot of Greek mythology and things like that. And, there's just these things with those types of stories that have been around for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's something about human nature that we want to tell our story. We just have this desire to resonate with others, with ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that kind of bigger idea of what a myth does for a society, for a culture, I believe that anything a culture does, a society does in the macro, first happens in the micro on an individual level,
Yes.
right? So, we have these legends and, stories that we tell ourselves, like, with America, we are individual and like bootstrap. And like, we have all of these identifying stories that we tell culturally. And
Yeah.
people are no different. The individual person is absolutely no different. And it's from my perspective in reading, I don't think it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's how we interact with our day-to-day life, how we get through the things that happen to us, how we make sense of our own existence. And so it's not so much that they're complete fiction, because the stories we tell ourselves are never complete fiction. I mean, we were there,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, um, memories and circumstances change and filter and do all of these things. So each of the pieces, together collectively, I kind of see them as more of an anthology of short stories, really. So each piece is its own little short story, the snapshot into this particular person, whoever you're looking at, into an interior space that may or may not be real, or how much of that um, reality is being constructed on the fly. So a lot of the pieces are allowed to just kind of disintegrate and be able to use a lot of negative spaces and things like that, which I always adore negative space. um, but good use of negative space, I do. um,
Right.
but you have these other portions of the figures specifically that are a little bit more solid, they're a little bit more um, cohesive. Those are the parts
Yeah.
of yourself that you feel a little bit more strongly about, so in each piece there's these, there's always this push and pull between, the concrete and what's allowed to just be unknown, or what's falling apart or building. And I prefer to have the question there versus, just this is what I'm saying, this is the story, there you go, you know um so yeah, that kind of unreliable narrator aspect of it, I do believe that we act that way in our own lives, you know. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because we think we grow out of it, but we don't.
No.
No,
No.
you know, but you can look back at yourself at 20 and be like, oh, that sweet child, she had no idea, you know. But at that
Right.
moment, you were certain, you know, your world was certain in the ways that
Oh
you
yeah.
felt that way. Anyway, so that's kind of where the work comes out of. That's the spirit of the work. Yeah.
I love that. That's so much fun. Like, it's I walked away thinking, oh, she's right. I'm one of those people that I will have full on conversations with myself. Like
Hmm.
I will, like after I come away from experience, and you're like, oh, I should have handled that differently, and so then I play back that
Hmm.
scenario, that situation in my head, and I reenact the conversations as how I wish they would have gone,
Hmm.
or what I think I would have said.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when I don't know, I socially I get anxiety, and so sometimes when I have to go somewhere, or if I imagine, like, if I were to put myself in this situation, how would I
Hmm.
react? So sometimes I have the conversations of, like, preemptively before it even
Hmm.
happens, to try and lessen my anxiety in a
Uh-huh.
sense. So it's just like I totally resonated with this concept. And like, even my grandfather, bless his heart, he has this saying that I think is quite fascinating.
Hmm.
We as humans, we get a little reckless with the truth
Oh,
sometimes.
I like that.
Isn't
I
that a good, like,
I like
if I
that.
ever write his biography
Hmm.
for him, I'm going to title it Reckless with the Truth, because sometimes we don't know
Hmm.
if his stories are real, or if they're altered, or if they actually happened and then he stretched
Hmm.
the truth. But
Hmm.
I feel like that saying, that phrase, reckless with the truth, totally encompasses your work
Yeah,
in a
I would.
sense.
I like that. Yeah, I like that phrase. I'm going to use that somewhere.
You can use it. You can keep it. It can be
I'll
yours now.
I'm going to use that somehow. But yeah, I think, you know, with as you mature and as you know, do all of these things and have these experiences, your life evolves. And I think, you know, as an artist, that's my calling is to try and um, put that out there in a way because I'm just as much of a storyteller through the two-dimensional work as anything else, and the best stories always leave something, a little something just off, or you don't quite know, just like you were saying, that is it real? We don't know, but it's more interesting if you don't actually, you know
Right? You have
it's
to
it's
leave that little bit up to
Mhm.
imagination.
Yeah. So, you know, I just that's what I'm trying to do. And so like at the other art fair, that's what I was starting to see really kind of resonate with people as they brought their own experiences and related that on top of my images, and as an artist, that's what you want. You want people to stop and kind of just interact a little bit. And that's outside of my control. Whatever's happening, you know, for that person is their story. It's part of their thing now. So it's fun to be able to have that as part of what I do. You get to see
Yeah.
that.
So, okay. So let's talk about metamorphosis a little bit.
Mhm.
So I'll describe the painting, and then maybe you, and then I have a couple questions, and then maybe you can tell us what it, where you got the idea and what it means for you. So
Sure.
it is a, a, a man. Is it a boy? Is it a man? I thought it, remember,
Actually, my
short
daughter.
hair. Oh, it's your daughter. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. I'm like going
Mhm.
off my memory. All I
Yeah.
know is that there is a body
Hmm.
crouched down with a blanket over their head, and you can kind of just see, like, the top of their head, maybe a little bit of the face, and then it has like these cream kind of neutral colors, but everything around it, truly, it is kind of dissolving, but the body is very clearly defined, hunched over
Hmm.
and covered in these covers, and you can
Hmm.
tell that it's a small child. It's not an adult. You can tell that it is a younger child.
Hmm.
um So, one, it's titled Metamorphosis. How did you come up with that title for it? And then
Um,
also, what does it, where did you get the story? What is the story that you're trying to convey with that piece?
Often the story actually starts with, that experience, that emotion. And then
Yeah,
the story kind of fills out around it. So, metamorphosis particularly is representing that urge for safety, you know, um,
mm,
that desire to retreat. And, um, you know, titles are funny. I'm not crazy about titling my work, honestly, but some paintings, the title is just there and they almost paint themselves. And that is one of those paintings for me.
right.
Um, and so, that cocooning, you just have that desire to become, and so the image has a little bit of that melancholy and a little bit of that, it's kind of a somber image a little bit.
Hmm.
So having it titled in that way, Metamorphosis adds, to me, I'm trying to add a little bit of understanding that is a reflexive, part. It's the in and out of sometimes you need to retreat and sometimes
Hmm.
but the hope is always there that you can come out of it, be something more than you are. Um, but it's trying to capture that moment of retreat.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I love that. And that's totally what I got. It's just like when you do look at it, you get this sense of that there's this the person is feeling this little bit of fear of some
Hmm.
kind.
Hmm.
And that comes across in the painting. Like you don't know what that fear is. Like is it, is that person wake up from a bad dream and they're retreating from the bad dream? Is there a thunderstorm happening outside? Is there, a fight going on in the other room? Like there's so many different possibilities of why this this kid would be pulled into that retreat, into that state of fear and needing to
Hmm.
hide, and I like that you leave so much you leave so much out
Yeah.
of that image for this to really focus on that aspect of it, and I just think that's so cool.
And, that's really on purpose because I really want it to be not so much grounded in, oh, this is a person that you're seeing on a bed, it's super concrete. I really want it to be more in um, that mental part, that space within yourself that you are withdrawing to
Yeah,
versus, just an actual physical space. Um, and, even within that image, that comforter is it's not really going to protect you from anything. So it is an act of
no,
hiding, that desire
yeah,
for, just something, anything, especially coming through like the last several years with COVID and all of these things. I think a lot of us have had that moment of just overwhelm,
oh
and we
yeah,
don't necessarily have a lot of safe spaces. So trying to find that space within yourself can be, sometimes all you have. Um,
yeah, it's like you're giving yourself an internal hug.
mhm, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So why did you decide to paint these stories through doing portraits, like do bodies? Because like, you could have gone abstract, you could have used symbolism, you could have,
Mhm.
you could have done a variety of things. So why use portraits? Why use
So,
bodies?
um, I came to my art practice later in life. I'm what is lovingly called a non-traditional student when I went back to school. Um, and so I attribute a lot of that to a lot of years of just people watching. I didn't paint. I wasn't doing any of those things. Um, And so once I got into that space of learning and picking up, a paintbrush for the first time and doing these things, um, once, this figure started, portion of learning that, everything just clicked for me. So painting the figure specifically is very much, it just makes sense to me. Um, and also there's, that anytime that there's a figure, or a gaze or things like that, it draws us in, you
Hmm.
know, it becomes more personal. We relate to that image just a little bit more. Um, and it anchors the attention, really. So versus like an abstract piece, which, there are elements of the abstract in my work. But it is very much based around the figure because I think the stories that I'm trying to tell are human stories.
Yeah.
And, that is the ultimate symbolism for people is ourselves. That's why we read stories about somebody else and, first person accounts and all of these things. It is us trying to relate ourselves to humanity, to the rest of humanity. And I don't think that I'm any different in, trying to do that through my use of the figure as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like you're speaking my language. That's why there's something about it's hard to sometimes explain to people because I also paint the human figure. Like, there's something
Mm-hmm.
about when the first time that you go into like a life drawing class and you have a live model in front of you
Mm-hmm.
and you start drawing and sketching and doing all that, there's something you become really connected with the body. You're not just seeing a naked body, you're seeing light, you're seeing dark, you're seeing shapes. And when you just start drawing and you're in the moment and you're really present, there's this there's just this connection that you make with then your hands and your mind drawing it. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to explain. And, that's why I've stuck with the human figure for so long as well. It's just like there's just this special connection to it.
Mm-hmm. And, I don't think I think that's embedded in us. I mean, the very first images before, way, way back are figures. They're
Yeah,
they're they're stories of whatever those people were experiencing and the things that they were important. And, you know, we're more educated in terms of like, we get our figure classes and things like that. But even, millennia ago, we were trying to tell our stories and we used ourselves to do it. So I think that
absolutely.
there's something innate in us as a species that is, symbolism. I see what I do as symbolism. I'm just using the body and the figure as my
As
um
that layer.
mhm, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I get it. It makes sense to me. That's why I also use the body. So it's just
Mhm,
like we're kindred spirits there. So I want to move on to you. As I always do. I did a deep dive on your website, and
mhm,
you have this beautiful collection that's called Isolation. And so, just to do a quick explanation, it's a woman and you use most of the canvas is covered in gold leaf, and
mhm,
like where her body would actually be is like covered in gold leaf, but you have all these different poses, but like certain body parts are like actually drawn are painted out and are very defined, whereas maybe the rest of the body is, and the background of the painting is all
mhm,
gold leaf. So you titled the collection itself Isolation. I'm sure there's titles for each painting, but can
mhm.
you tell us a little bit about this collection, the use of gold leaf, why you used it, and yeah.
So I revisit gold leaf. I've been using it on and off for years. There's something about the nature of it. It's both very flat, it flattens out the image a lot, but it's also very reflective.
Mhm.
That particular small little body of work that, I kind of come back to it and I play with it started out of COVID, when we were all in lockdown and, the our our way to communicate with others became very small and limited to this little screen. So
Mhm.
that's why these are all small little pieces for the most part, like 5 by 7.
Oh, really? I didn't realize they were that
Mhm.
small. They look huge. Like in my head, it looked like it was supposed to be like a 24 by 36. I was
Nope,
like, wow,
they're
that's a
all
beautiful
very,
big
very
painting. I didn't look at the sizes.
small. Yeah. A lot of my work is bigger, but this particular series is all small images in that kind of picture format, because I am referencing, you know, the little black screen that we're looking at and how out of, how we isolate ourselves in that. Um, I don't love how they photograph. Honestly, anything that's shiny and reflective is
It's
hard to
hard to
photograph.
photograph.
Yeah. And gold leaf is maddening to try and get a good image of it. But when they are set up as, in the way that they're meant to be viewed, um, the gold leaf actually, it changes. It changes with the lighting, it changes with the time of day. So the images are constantly changing throughout a span of time. Um, and, there's an element of, I'm talking about voyeurism with it and our engagement with how we interact with somebody else that we don't necessarily know. So,
Ooh.
spaces that we're leaving out at these, the images are very vulnerable because it's all
Yes.
skin. Everything that's painted is skin, but anything that is, that would be risque or a nude or anything like that, that's all gone, you know?
Yeah.
But they still read as if, which is
Yes,
interesting.
you did a good job because like you could tell like what the poses potentially would be. Like the
Hmm.
way that it, it's everyone, you just have to go see it because it's so beautifully done, because it does look like that's so beautifully put, that it does look like it might be a little bit risque, but you covered up what would be risky.
Hmm.
Whether if it was a nude, all of that. Oh, I'm gonna have to go look at it again now that you say that, because I did
So,
catch that when
yeah.
looking.
So, in person with those pieces, that reflective quality of gold leaf, it when you are walking past it, when I have people, walking past it, like if I was walking past a green shirt, it would reflect back at you. So, but it's hazy. It's not a true mirror. Like you can take gold leaf and make it mirror quality, and I don't like that, for this work especially. Um, but it's hazy, and so you, as the viewer, are influencing what you're seeing in a way that is very subconscious. That unless it's pointed out, most people don't catch that. And so,
Hmm.
it really is this discussion that I'm trying to have about how we edit ourselves, what we allow to be seen. And, we often use online as, I'm being authentic, I'm being vulnerable, but we are very highly edited and curated in our use of social media at this time. So, it's this knowing quality between the piece and the viewer. You do not get to see everything, but I'm giving you
Yeah.
enough. And also as the viewer, it becomes a little voyeuristic as well. You're adding
Yeah.
yourself on top of this and reflecting back at yourself and adding to the own story. So yeah, that's the kind of, I love those little things.
This is what I live for. This is what I live for. I hearing these little meanings and nuances about the work, it adds so much more to the painting themselves. Obviously, like
Mhm.
as you experience, like having, you know, the audience or the collector or the person have their own opinion about it and like have them absorb that. But then,
Mhm.
you know, you know, then being able to share and asking them, hey, do you want me to share like what is about? But
Mhm.
having those deeper levels and those meanings, like it just it just really tickles my fancy. you know?
Mhm. Mhm. But yeah, so I do like having those little, the little Easter eggs that are kind of for me. So, like those pieces, they're just, like I said, they're teeny tiny. And they're just so pretty, and so that everybody's, oh, it's so pretty. And, it's fun to see where people stop with that line of thought. Is it just pretty? What do you like? What are you seeing? And that conversation that, sometimes you get to have with somebody, or, if it's in a
Mm-hmm.
gallery or someplace, you can stand back and listen, because, all of us artists are always listening to when people are like talking about our work.
Oh,
Um,
it's the best.
it's the
It's the
best.
best to be like, okay, he's here, he's listening. Then
Mhm.
okay, okay, he's getting it. Oh, that's a new thought. I didn't
But
think
yeah,
about that
exactly.
before.
Mhm. Um, so yeah, having those types of things, especially again with the figure and the history of using the figure, and specifically female figures, in terms of the male gaze, and putting ourselves out there as a commodity, say.
Yeah,
Our beauty, our
yeah,
youth is a commodity. And so that particular piece, I'm using those elements, and I'm trying to do it in a different way that, um, one, empowers the figure, because the figure is
mhm.
leaving out as much. And they're actually all me. They're all self-portraits.
I thought so. When I looked at it, I was like, it kind of looks like her. Like, I was like, she
Mhm.
definitely used herself as the model.
Yeah. Um, and so, yeah, I'm a big believer, since I do use models and I use people that, I know, uh, that I don't want to ask anybody to put themselves in a position that they feel vulnerable in, that I wouldn't myself do.
Yeah,
Yeah, for these little pieces, because they do, even though everything, the imagination does the most for you, even though they're nothing to be seen, they do come across that way, as a
yeah,
little titillating, a little this. And it's it's fun to see. Those are the games we get to play, and then we get to see how it plays
yeah.
out.
No, and I think it's really fun as and we as artists, we are not the first ones to paint the woman's body. It has been
Mm,
happening forever, since the beginning of time,
yes.
and it's so funny, and well, not funny, I think it's so interesting that it's very rarely do you see the male nude.
Mm-hmm.
Typically it is always the woman's body,
Uh-huh. It is. Um,
and it's that's what's always fascinating. Well, one, just because I've painted both the male and female, the
mhm.
female body is a lot prettier, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Second, second, it's all, when a woman has the curves, it is way more fun to paint and draw.
Hmm. Oh,
Just
yeah.
experiencing the
Hmm.
curves. And then also, I think as women, one of the reasons why I started painting the woman's body was to empower myself, because I didn't like my body when I was younger. So
Hmm.
it's like empowering to paint all my nooks and crannies and crevices, and
Hmm.
own it in a
Yeah.
sense. So it's just like, and it's always twofold. The woman, when they paint it, they feel empowered, but then on the flip side, when a man does it, it's the male gaze, and it's can be
Hmm.
sexualized.
Hmm. No, yeah, the interaction that people have with a nude figure is beyond interesting. I do teach, and so I'll teach figure study courses and things like that. And we're all so used to seeing a female form, so used to it, full naked. You might have a little of like, oh, it's a nude. I'm like, yeah. But you will see true discomfort when it's a male model.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
absolute complete discomfort from, across the board. Um, and
that's so funny.
it's so interesting, because we are so used to seeing a fully nude female, have for years,
Yeah.
even if it's like, ooh. But we are not with the male figure. And I think there's a level of vulnerability that is implied with a nude male figure.
Mm-hmm.
Or honestly, in a lot of my pieces, I do use both genders for my models. And I do find that it is interesting how people relate to the images when I start changing. the gender of what's, playing out that role. So,
Interesting. I wonder, like, if you were to do like the same painting, ultimately have one male body in it, and then
mhm.
one with the female body in it, and then the different, yeah, the different reactions. That's just that would be a really fun scientific social behavior, human behavior study to do.
Yeah. Oh, and even, at the fair, I had one of the most interesting. I had actually two people. Um, One, all of the figures for the most part that happened to be there in the paintings that I brought. I had more in the back, but they didn't come forward. Um,
Yeah,
they're all men, which is, it just happened
I
that way.
noticed that.
So I don't just paint men, but that was just what was out. Um, and people thought that this must be a male painter, and they were
Hmm.
surprised to find out that I was a woman. Um, and it was just very, very interesting to see those preconceptions of what people assume I would be when they see the work.
Yeah,
And like I said, I did not plan that. That just kind of happened that way, but it was so interesting. It's like, huh,
yeah,
interesting. But
yeah.
yeah.
It's I human how our psyches work, and like having
Hmm.
those, first initial reactions to things and like judgments.
Hmm.
It's That's why I love going to fairs and being in fairs, because you get to people watch.
Hmm.
I That is something that I've always loved, like even as a
Hmm.
kid, because it was before social media. My parents were like, "Go play outside." It was like,
Yeah.
okay, and I grew up in a small town, and
Hmm.
that's what my friends and I would do. We would go and we would sit on the corner and we grab some food, and then we would just people watch, and then we'd make up stories about people and what their backgrounds were, or
Oh, that's
their
the
little
best game.
lives,
That's the
or
absolute.
whatever. Like, why are those? Oh, they're fighting. What are they fighting about? Let's make this
Hmm.
up. So it's and just whether based off what they're wearing, their, how they look, age, whatever, there's always
Hmm.
like this preconceived idea that has been based off stories for so
Hmm.
long that we already, put a level, we already have a pre level of judgment before we even see things. So I think it's really interesting that people thought you were a male painter because
Hmm.
of that.
Yeah. I've, that
Mm.
that was new. That was a new one for me. I was like, huh. So I've been playing around with that thought. I was like, that is just an interesting thing that happened, I guess. But yeah, it was. And especially coming from my side of things, I have my own filter. I see my work in from my own point of view. And,
Hmm.
there's definitely an argument to be made that each of my pieces is in some fashion a self-portrait, regardless of the gender of the model.
Oh,
You know?
always.
Um, because the what I'm actually talking about is that emotion, that kernel, like trying to find like the core of a moment. Um,
Yeah.
and I have my experience. That's what I got. So there's an argument to be made that there's some obscuring and kind of some stepping back just by using multiple different people versus um
Just
you
like
know
a woman all the time, just
Mhm.
because it'd
Yeah.
be, yeah. No, that makes sense. So when you so do you typically work in collections, or do you one offs? Like, do you have, like, you had the isolation where it was like a theme for each
Hmm.
painting? So and then when you do step into a painting, do you already have an idea, like, oh, this one's going to be a male model, or I need this one to be a female model? Like, how do you
Hmm.
decide collections, one
Typically,
offs of
yeah, I
models?
kind of the way I view it is there's kind of this umbrella of the idea of, like you read the statement at the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
we are storytellers and these are the stories that we tell. So there are different ways and modes of visual storytelling that I can use that I have at my fingertips, really, to tell those stories. So they all kind of fall under that arc. And so, like with the isolation series, I'm still using the figure. I'm still using, these other things like, the use of negative space, but I'm using it slightly differently to tell a
Mm-hmm.
more direct thing. I want to talk about this portion of this part. And like there's on the one wall there's a bunch of small little very very colorful paintings that are part of my new thing that I kind of jump in and out of these series, really. I mean, um and that one comes out of last year. I went and I hiked the Camino de Santiago in
Oh wow.
Spain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Did you do
and
the full thing or just part of it?
no, I did the full thing. I
Oh
hiked
wow.
across the
Bravo.
Del Norte part, so across the northern coast of Spain, um, which was amazing. Definitely go do it if you ever have a chance. But the work, came out of that experience of like, okay, there's this tradition, this pilgrimage tradition that even though I don't share in the religious faith that it came out of, there's 1,000 years of history of people doing this thing. And, it's interesting because at this point, only about 50% of the people that even do it are Catholic or even religious at all. And yet,
Yeah.
I wanted to go and I wanted to experience that and, kind of interview the people and get their stories. Um, and so this new body of work is coming out of that experience and it's kind of morphed a little bit. And, it's talking about, I'm trying to talk about how we relate the things that we remember, you know, these experiences that we have, you never can replicate for somebody else that moment. That's
Yeah.
always the struggle of trying to translate something that was an experience into words that somebody else can understand so they can get a hint of the experience. It's this like weird
Yeah.
telephone game. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but it still kind of to me falls under that greater umbrella of we're just storytellers and how we engage with our life and our history and how we try and share that um, is just so interesting. And it feels like, to me, it feels like this rabbit hole that I'm constantly chasing. And I'm like, I don't know how deep this goes. I'll just keep going, you know?
Yeah, right. That's
Mhm.
exactly how I think all of it is. So, it sounds like similar to like how I do my collections is like I start with one general theme or a concept and then it gets broke. Each painting is a different version of like that story within
Mhm.
that umbrella of a theme kind of a
Yeah.
thing. So, which I think is really interesting to do it that way because then you really get a deep dive into this idea and concept and um, you get to really look at it from multiple different perspectives instead of just
Mhm.
like putting it in one painting. You get to put it in a bunch of other paintings that
Yeah.
then that those all tell a story. You're right, like an
Mhm.
anthology kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, but that's really cool. I can't wait to see more of that. So were those on your website?
No, those are not on my website
Okay, I
yet.
was just like,
So,
I didn't see a whole lot of color. So like you're using
mm-mm.
more color
Yeah,
in
I'm using,
these.
yeah, they're a lot brighter. I'm using kind of like glazing as color field kind of filters
Cool.
to lay over top. So yeah, that body of work I'll show in December here locally. Um, so it's time to, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to test those out and see how those are interacting. Um, and on a wall and in a space. So yeah, the other art fair just was this great little experiment that I did with everybody, and they were so nice to join me in my experiment. But
Awesome.
yeah, once those are done, and that little collection is kind of more complete, I'll have those on my website as well. Um, but yeah, it's just with that one, since I am using these moments and talking about memory and how we try and recall and how things get colored, you know So just having these like real bright, glazes that are not as they're kind of heavy-handed, it feels like in some ways, compared to what I do in these other spaces. But just it filters it. So I'm literally giving a filter over this image.
I can't wait to see them. I can't wait to see them. Like, I already have like an idea in my head. Like, now that you've described, I'm like, oh, preconceived. But then I'm also like over here in this box. I'm like, that is a great concept. I'm going to pocket that for later for something else. And then we'll circle back. But Shannon, where if someone wanted to either buy your work or see your work, where can people do that?
The best places to find me is my website. Obviously, you can, go to shannonsoldner.com and I'm there, or Instagram. Instagram is a really great way to reach me. You can DM me and whatever. But yeah,
you're like I'm one of those people that actually will respond to my DMs.
I mean, not the creepy ones, so no.
Yeah, not the creepy ones, but the ones that kind of sound legit, not the ones, hey, I want to buy your artwork and send me money. How can I send you a check? And you're like, oh, like scam, block.
Oh, that was actually how I knew I had made it to actual art level when I got my first scam email. I want to buy my wife a picture and I've seen your work. I'm like, no, you haven't.
You're like, I've made it. Yes.
Yes. I am worthy enough to be scammed. But yeah.
Right? Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on. Really appreciate it. And everyone listening, I will make sure to include the paintings that we talked about, her website, her Instagram, email, all of that in the show notes. And then hopefully, if we continue to watch her, I'll maybe sneak a post in on my stuff about this new collection she has and to share when she's done with it, because I'm excited to see it now. So anyway, thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on the Artist Stoop today. Really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jillian, for having me. It's been so fun. It's always fun to nerd out about my work. So thanks for giving me the chance.
You're most welcome. And that, my friends, wraps up another colorful episode of The Artist Stoop. A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their art and stories. If you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the next Stoop chat. And don't forget to spread the love. Share your favorite episodes with fellow art enthusiasts, and let's build this community together. Connect with us on social media at JGuze Studio and Jillian Zepeda Art for behind-the-scene peeks, artist spotlights, and a sneak peek at my own art. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep that creative fire burning. This is Jillian Zepeda signing off from the Artist Stoop. And remember, the world is your canvas, so paint it vividly.